Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Smart Dumb PhD podcast, the only podcast where I think that being smart is definitely an advantage, but being dumb is a greater advantage. And that is something we are going to learn about from today's guest, Dr. Lauri de Silva. And before we talk about her, I also want to let you know that this is the podcast where we talk about the career transitions that PhDs can do and what are the possibilities that they have for themselves in their career post their PhD apart from academia. So, coming back to today's guest, Dr. Lauri De Silva, she is someone who has bridged the worlds between IC chemistry, metallurgy, and industrial innovation. So, she had a PhD from Glasgow Caledonian University to working in roles both at academia and industry, including companies like Pfizer, Mahale, and now she's leading the welding and joining team at Advanced Forming Research Center, University of Strathclyde. So I believe Laurie has walked the tightrope that so many PhDs find daunting. So she's balancing research, project management, industry, collaboration, and academic leadership. So on that note, Laurie, my first question to you is, why did you choose to do a PhD?
Good question. I didn't actually. So I did my degree, which was a master's in chemistry from Glasgow Uni, and I worked really hard. So I know that some people are just naturally bright and they can, get there first without trying. Like that was not the case for me. I definitely am. I'm bright. I'm not necessarily the brightest, but I've got a very good work ethic. So I worked really hard to get my first, and I thought that's me. After that, I'm not doing any more higher education. I'm going into work. And I ended up coming across a Knowledge Transfer Partnership, a KTP, which is something in the UK where you can work for a couple of years as a graduate with a company, but also with a university. And they give you opportunities for CPD. So they do things like, if you want to do a further master's or you want to invest in any further training, they'll pay for it. So they did suggest that I do another master's, but I was thinking, well, I've already got my master's. And then they said, well, what about an MPhil? And in my sort of understanding of an MPhil, I've only heard of it in the context of somebody not necessarily passing their PhD and then being awarding an MPhil. So I didn't want that to be assumed about me on my CV, if you know what I mean. So they suggested why not do a PhD on the topic of what you were doing with industry. So it was an industrial problem. It was looking at delamination and roll bonding of bimetals for engine bearings with a company, and they said that could be the topic of your PhD if you want. And I was reluctant at first, but I had a mentor, and they sort of suggested that this would be really good for your career, And actually, if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't be in my current role now. So it has all worked out really well for me. But I have to say that studying and working full time is difficult. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's a lot on your mental health. You're spending summers in the library, seeing your friends on Facebook out enjoying themselves
yeah,
while
yeah.
while you're studying. But all worth it in the end, I think, for where I am just now in my career. But the answer is I didn't set out to do it. Didn't set out to do it in metallurgy. Started off in chemistry, and you just kind
Mhm.
of fall into these roles.
Right,
Really,
right. Yeah.
there was a girl I went to university with, and it was actually the job I had, the KTP.
Mm,
She'd been offered it, but she'd also been offered a job with AstraZeneca.
mm,
And she took the job with AstraZeneca and recommended me for this other role. So
mm,
the role that I actually interviewed for and then got my PhD with
mm.
wasn't something that I actually sought out, if you know what I mean. I sort of fell into metallurgy in a way and then enjoyed it because it was so closely related to chemistry. So I
Yeah.
think in STEM you can just take any opportunities that are sort of cross-cutting that way.
Right, right. So I see that things have been falling in place for you
Mm-hmm.
serendipitously, but at the same time, you have been working your way across them. Now, one thing I want to ask is, Laurie, this knowledge transfer thing that happens only at University of Strathclyde, I find it very unique because you work at the intersection of both academia and industry, right? Now, this
Mm-hmm.
is something that doesn't happen at many universities. It's very, very academic and theoretical. So, is there any opinion like how that makes you different, how it exposes to you both academia and industry problems, how that sets your mindset apart from PhDs who are just doing, the academic work? What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. So KTPs are you're actually based in the company, so you're
Mm,
like you're almost as if it's a 9 to 5 job, but
mm,
you have a supervisor at the university that helps you work through any kind of applying science to the problem, if you like. So the difference is probably that I always see science and the chemistry and the interesting parts as applied to something industrial. And I think that helps if you're going for any jobs later on in industry, because as soon as you get to industry, they're like, okay, innovation, but what's the benefit?
Right.
What's my cost savings? How's that going to reduce the scrap down the line? So already you're in the mindset of thinking like what your stakeholder would be,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. So things
Yeah.
like for collaborative research where you're working with companies, you're working with universities, it's really good insight to know where the stakeholder's coming from, why that research would be of interest to them, look at all the cost savings it could give them, or reduce time to market. But sometimes I think if you're siloed in a PhD on campus thinking about one problem, you don't really see the benefit or the outcome or the applicability of that to the real world, if you know what I mean, or how you
Absolutely.
apply it.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, it's so good to do that research because that research needs to be done. But I think my experience has been the more mid TRL level where the ideas and the research are there. It's just you applying it to the industrial problem. And I think it really helps probably broaden your career opportunities because
Right. Yeah.
a lot of the time, if you're going for an interview with a company like Rolls-Royce or Boeing,
Hmm.
they're not going to be so interested in your specific, really
Work.
esoteric PhD.
Yeah.
It's how your skill set and how you approach a problem and how that can be applied to help their business, if you like. So it does really open up your opportunities probably more.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree on that because after my master's, I was at GE, General Electric, working as a scientist. And the very first thing that I got to know was the business side of things. I believe that's something we so miss in academia. But when we are working on the intersection of something which is academic yet translational, which is going into industry, like the way you did your PhD, I believe it makes you much aware of how to position yourself from industry, which many PhDs miss out on. And then when they're transitioning, they're finding it very difficult because you get so zoomed in your research problem, you don't know how to zoom out and connect it to the bigger picture. So, Laurie, in your case, you started from chemistry, moved into metallurgical engineering, and now lead a welding and joining research team, right? So there have been significant shifts that have been happening. So was this a natural progression, or as you moved in your journey, you realized that, yeah, this is the thing that I do well at? How is it?
Okay, it's interesting. So the first jump from chemistry to metallurgy was definitely just fortuitous. I mean, that was just, yeah, as you say, serendipity. Somebody recommended me for a job. I went for it and I was good at it. It was like, I feel like applied inorganic chemistry. So it wasn't so different from chemistry.
Hmm.
Um, and then from that job, that was only a 2-year placement with Mali Engine Systems.
Hmm.
And then we were working with different. I was trying to get research done cheaply, which, as we know, is not an easy task. So I was looking for local companies that would do like small, like maybe light interferometry measurements for me and see if they could get them done for free. And one of those companies was the Advanced Forming Research Centre.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we heard about them. And I say we, it was me and my supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of my placement, I had the opportunity to either stay in the company or go elsewhere. And I saw the opportunity at the Advanced Forming Research Centre. So I did actively go for that opportunity because they were mid TRL research. They had all of this really good equipment that you could use, and it was all like state of the art. And you were working with companies, tier one members like Boeing, Rolls Royce, and Oberon Develop. It was a great opportunity, and it
Yeah.
was all young kind of graduates and PhD students mainly. So I wanted to go there.
Yeah.
And I said to my supervisor, I'm going to go for this opportunity. We both
Hmm.
saw that sector. We went for the tour and he was very supportive. And I asked him for if he had any books on, I think I was looking at forging and forming really to
Yeah.
focus on for the interview. And
Yeah.
he gave me the book and it had like lots of, the tabs on it and highlights. And I was like, oh, that's so kind of him to do that for me because so that I would know which areas were the best to focus on, not realizing that he also had an interview for the same company.
Huh. Okay.
And that's why he bookmarked the pages on the book. And we both
Okay.
ended up moving to the
Yeah.
AFRC.
Yeah.
So then I was a research assistant there while I finished my PhD, became a research associate, and then an opportunity for solid state joining equipment arose. So we were getting this big investment in rotary friction welding equipment. And my background was in cold solid state joining with
Hmm.
cold roll bonding, slightly different, but the metallurgy was very similar.
Hmm.
So I went for that. And then the industrial appetite for that area of research around that equipment was quite high. There was a lot of work with various companies. So they ended up making that a technical area in its own right.
Mm.
And then I was able to like build a team. That's how I met Lauri and some great colleagues. So it's sort of just one incremental step has led to the other, but then there's also been opportunities that have
Mm.
sort of
Mm.
developed. So I think also being in a young kind of company, a young research company where it is growing,
Yeah.
you almost get a chance to grow with it,
Right.
if you like. So there's a
Right.
lot of us that started at the same time that ended up becoming theme leads in different technical areas. So I was welding and joining. There was another one that was residual stress. Another one was modelling. So if you come to a company at the right time
Mm.
with the right interest from industry, like you can just grow with it. Obviously, if you're putting in the effort, and a lot of that's about building your own reputation internally. So
Mm.
like if
Mm.
you
Mm.
are,
Mm.
you're diligent and you're known as somebody who's always, trying to meet the deadline and,
Right.
giving it your all. I think a lot of it is that internal reputation of just trying your best. I mean, it doesn't
Okay.
mean you're going to succeed every time, because a lot of the time it's out with your hands whether a supplier delivers something on time or
Yeah.
But if you're trying to actively problem solve and trying to be on top of it and you're doing your best, I think people
Yeah.
do recognize that, and then
Right. Right.
eventually, not everything's a meritocracy. I
Right.
appreciate that, but
Yeah.
I think if you're putting in your best, sometimes that does bear fruit for you.
I want to come back to that internal reputation question. I've just noted it down because we want to expand on that a bit. But before that, I just want to come back to your supervisor, Laurie, because you've
Yeah,
been mentioning a lot about him and seems like he was a really helpful supervisor, right? So,
yeah.
what do you think is the importance of choosing the right supervisor for your PhD? How can it make your journey so much more memorable versus your mentor becoming a tormentor? So, what is your opinion there?
I know, but how much do you really get to choose? I don't know. I think sometimes it's your luck of who's your
Yeah.
who's your supervisor. But for me, it was somebody that I felt comfortable enough to confide in. Like, so I
Yeah.
could, if I had a problem, I would be happy to go to him and ask his advice. But at the same time, it is important that they challenge you. Like, you don't want somebody to just be a yes man to you. Like, somebody
Yeah.
has to push you outside your comfort zone. And he was
Right.
constantly doing that. I mean,
Huh.
not that I enjoyed it at all, but it was good to be pushed. Like, for example, my PhD, would I have necessarily done that without him convincing me that that was a good career move?
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe not.
Hmm.
So I think having somebody that does push you, but also is a sounding board for you for any
Hmm.
of your problems that you come across. Because there will be times where there's conflict or there's something happening. Even in your personal life versus your, and it's important to have an understanding
Right.
supervisor that way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in the end, you want to. I would say obviously we're colleagues. He's my supervisor, but in the end, we kind of became friends
Yeah.
in a weird way. Yeah, and you go on
Yeah.
like a journey together, and then like they also it's also a journey for them. Mentoring is also a journey. So I think I don't know how much you get to choose, but if you can try
Yeah.
to choose somebody who's compassionate but pushes you, then that would
Yeah.
be great.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm keeping those words with me. I just want to reiterate with the for the audience. Compassionate is one thing. Definitely look for that trait. Maybe that
Yeah.
might work out in the future. Of course, you don't get to choose and you don't get to know the entire information about what this person will turn out to be. But maybe
Mm-hmm.
compassionate is one trait that you can look for to
Mm-hmm.
understand if this would be a good person. And now I'll circle back to the internal reputation question. Okay, Laurie, you said about meritocracy. Of course, that's important, but you also quickly mentioned that it doesn't always get you the opportunities you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
have to work on that visibility, if that's the term
Mm-hmm.
I can use.
Yeah.
So, what is your opinion like when you're talking about building that internal reputation and coming back to visibility? What are things that some people might miss out on doing that you think they should do? Because it's not always meritocracy, right, Laurie?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I don't know. I think so. It can be really small things, small habits,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
see being making an effort to be on time every morning. Like I know that's a small thing, but in academia, sometimes people stroll in at half time.
yeah,
I know
yeah.
they work later, but making an effort, especially in industry,
Hmm.
industry start early. You need to be there early.
Right, yeah,
Being dressing smart, making sure that you're polite whenever you're
right,
talking to customers. You're keeping your own opinions to yourself. So
yeah,
a lot of the time that's difficult in a business environment.
yeah.
But you'll wait till the conversation, the meeting's over, and you might say to your mentor or yourself, "What do you think of that?" But
Hmm.
you're definitely not. There's a lot of ego sometimes, and you have to try and
Yeah, you're covering that. Yeah,
understand how
yeah,
to not be sucked into that
yeah,
sometimes, or
yeah,
especially in that with some academia, and things like sometimes being a girl in especially in engineering, you're one of the few women in the room, and it can be quite an intimidating thing to be in the meeting if you have
true.
something to say.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think if you have something to say or you're thinking it, chances are that everyone else in the room is thinking it, so you should
Yeah. Yeah.
say it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time you'll realize that people will respect you for it, or for raising a concern, or for, um, but that's quite difficult to do. Sometimes a lot of people won't speak out in like a business, if it's a sort of important business meeting, but I think that can be good for your visibility.
Hmm.
And there's been a lot of times where I've been hesitant to say something,
Hmm.
said it to somebody else, like at the coffee break,
Hmm.
and then they'll say it in the meeting later on, and
Hmm.
then they'll like it'll be well received.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
part of me is thinking, well, why didn't I should have just said that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
it's having the confidence, and eventually you get that after you've been in a lot of those situations and they feel less intimidating.
Right.
But
Yeah.
sometimes being the only woman in the room can put you off a little bit, but maybe that's only specific to the women
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
listen to the podcast.
I agree because I have been in engineering roles. I am a PhD in metallurgical engineering as well. And I was the only woman working on multi-axial fatigue. Okay. By the way, there's no one in the world across who has worked on multi-axial fatigue. So that way, I was in rooms. There were no women in the room, but I was in those rooms. And it was hard to speak because you don't know, right? And that's where you get that courage from inside to start speaking. I think that might have been true for you as well, Laurie. And
Yeah,
when you know that you're the only woman in the room, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or what, that comes and like it holds you back. Uh, what
100%.
has been for your case, Laurie? Like, how have you grown the Laurie, the part that was hesitant to speak, and now the one who speaks? But at times, I'm sure it again comes back. No, Laurie, don't speak. You can,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you ever listen to, there's a podcast that's called The Guilty Feminist? She's quite good. So she would say things like, I'm a feminist, but I like painting my nails or something like that. She's quite funny. It's supposed to be comical, but she said this thing, and it's so true. She said, if Martin Luther King was a man,
hmm,
a woman, she would say, I've got a dream, but it's probably nothing to talk about. Probably not worth mentioning this dream because there's nothing
yeah,
to it. Do you know? And there's something about, and this maybe comes across or sounds sexist, but men just have the confidence to say things, even
right,
if they're not probably 100% right.
yeah,
Whereas a woman will
yeah,
probably be right,
yeah.
but still be like, maybe I'm not right. Maybe I should double check. I, don't, I feel like it's a female thing to not want to say something unless you're 100% certain. And
I,
especially like in meeting, that's difficult to not, you need to maybe double check something, or you want to double check a
I,
paper.
I want to interrupt you there because I had read this article on Harvard. Maybe after this podcast, I'll send it across to you. They
Yeah.
studied the confidence of women versus men, okay, and how it
Mm-hmm.
changes over a period of time. So when women are starting early in their career, their confidence is way below those of men starting early in their career, and it's like in their 20s, okay. And
Mm-hmm.
once the women are past 35, when once they're working and they're
Mm-hmm.
in the industry, they realize certain things, and their confidence was too high. But for the men,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that high, but
It
it's
stays the
kind of
same.
rising gradually. Okay. So I guess it somewhere comes from our conditioning as well. I don't know how we are conditioned, but there are, as you mentioned, these are small things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere it's built in our head that maybe it doesn't matter what I speak. So it takes time to see that what you speak is actually valuable.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, it's different. I think it's just a different experience for men and women, because sometimes, like, if a man or a woman says something, the man is instantly coming from a place of being believed,
Yeah.
whereas it's like white coat syndrome. If a middle-aged man is telling you that,
Mm,
must be true.
mm.
Whereas if a young woman in engineering is telling you that, oh, is she how qualified is she? There's just all this kind of
Right. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
background of the listener listening to
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
would be at times where you would be doing a tour with customers, and
Mm,
we'd be standing in front of our machines talking about our research, and
mm,
some of the customers would say, "Oh, is this your baby?"
mm,
And I
mm.
was, that's strange. Did you ask that man down there if that machine was his baby? It's just a different way of approaching women sometimes, and I think also if you look quite young.
Mm,
So a
mm.
lot of the time, like I'm sometimes mistaken for a student, like a student.
Yeah.
So I'll
Yeah.
actually be presenting in a conference, and they'll say, "So are you, doing your masters or something?" I'd be like, "No, I'm 15 years in now, so that's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. True, true. And there's so much you expanded on that one thing of internal reputation, and those are all things to do with your soft skills. And people don't
mm-hmm.
realize those are harder to build than your hard skills, which can keep changing, right? The tech stack
Yeah,
that you have to learn can keep changing, and you can learn that quickly. But it's the
mm-hmm.
softer skill that takes time. So, what is one skill, Laurie, you thought you didn't have earlier when you were doing your PhD, or were fresh into industry after doing your PhD, and that you have been constantly working on?
I've been constantly working on. Mm. don't know. I just feel like I'm constantly working on myself in all different aspects of my career. I don't think I've ever felt like, well, this, I'm there. This is it.
Right. Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like I've always wanted to work on things like confidence, assertiveness,
Mm,
probably things that are more because I'm a female, and maybe that doesn't come across, but it's how I definitely feel
mm,
internally.
mm,
Um, but I've always been quite naturally, the soft skills kind of come easily to me
mm,
because I'm initially thinking of the human.
mm,
If you know what I
mm,
mean, that's how I would approach work.
mm,
Like
mm.
because I know you sometimes get caught up in, the academic rivalry of it all and who's publishing what, who's saying what. But at the end of the day, everyone going to work is just a human, trying to do their best.
Yeah.
And if you approach it that way,
Yeah.
and try and just connect to people in a friendly way, they
Mm,
do appreciate that. And you know, kind of have mutual respect for your colleagues, I think can get you further than you think.
mm, mm,
um, because you're respecting what skill set everyone else is bringing to the table, if you know what I mean, especially if you're working in like a team environment. So I think for me, it was probably interesting when I became a theme lead and I started building a team because I'd never had a team before. So I wasn't sure
yeah.
if it was something I would be
Yeah.
good at doing or not.
Mm,
And I think that was really interesting for me because you got to work with people who, well, thankfully, it was really easy for me because my team were really diligent and hardworking and had a good work ethic. So there wasn't much that I had to really manage because
mm,
they were all very good in their own right. But I think having that mutual respect for each other and transparency and communication and things like
mm,
that
mm,
worked really well for us. Like we did work really well as a team. We just all gelled. I'm not saying that that would be the case if somebody else was not doing their end of the workload or maybe had a different attitude. Maybe that wouldn't be the same.
yeah.
But yeah, that was interesting for me. But it was the first time I was leading a team, and I think being approaching it in a certain way, maybe from a more female perspective,
Mm, mm,
really worked well
mm, mm, mm.
in my experience. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'd probably have to have a different number of teams before I could say whether that was really the case because I think it depends on who's reporting into you.
Yeah, so I think for you it's a natural progression because I see you as a people manager, like who is good with their people skills, and I guess that's a natural progression into a project manager role. So,
Mm-hmm.
Laurie, I want to ask you at this point of time, being a project manager, can you break it down for a PhD, say, who doesn't understand what project manager does, right? So, what are the traits that are required, and how you can go from being in a technical role to a project manager role, and how you already might have some transferable skills of project management while you were doing your PhD.
Yeah, definitely. I think a PhD in itself is a project that you're managing. So most
True.
PhDs are,
Project
depending on how
managers.
well it's going, good
Yeah,
project managers.
yeah, yeah.
um, so things that you're doing in project management, you are big things. Schedule. You're keeping to the schedule. You're creating milestones, deliverables for yourself. You're making sure that you're achieving that on time.
Mm,
You're working to a budget. You're understanding that budget, how much of it is indirect costs, other costs, and making sure that you're spending that on time. And it's also a lot of stakeholder management. So you'd think, what kind of stakeholders do you do having a PhD? But it's your supervisors. It's
mm,
if you've got any external funders. If you like, it's the people that are going to be doing your Viva. If they're a stakeholder, you're trying to convince
true,
them that the
true.
work you've done is enough to get you your PhD. So a lot of it's about having persuasion, influence, basically communicating effectively, communicating the status of your project. It's also maybe working with different suppliers and
Mm,
working with different inputs into your project. You maybe, I
mm,
mean, in a PhD might be different. You might have somebody doing a little bit of testing for you. You might be working with another researcher in another environment. It's how you deal with those interactions, how you're managing those contacts and supply chains. And then it just gets bigger. So that's like your PhD is a small version of that. And then
mm,
in a big collaborative research and development project, it's much bigger. So you've got multiple different parties, multiple stakeholders, industry, academia, and it's how you're communicating with all of them and basically making sure the project's running to time on budget with a good impact and good
mm,
quality research
mm,
output, really.
mm,
And a technical background is definitely good because for me, I'm working in a technical environment and understanding the problems and the consequences of any technical hiccups within the project. You can
mm,
influence the direction of that, maybe how you change and you pivot.
mm.
So the one sort of main rule of project management is the plan's always going to change. It's never
True.
going to be you make the one plan at the beginning
Yeah.
and that's what you see all the way through. So a lot of it's understanding change management. How are you going to pivot based on the most recent problem, and are you going to get all the stakeholders to buy into that? And yeah, there's a lot of interesting bits about project management, and understanding the technical complexities and the consequences of the decisions you make are really important. And
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
I mean, not saying you have to be technical to be a project manager, but it's definitely an advantage, especially in
True.
engineering.
Yeah, yeah. On that note, I just want to again ask you, um, when it comes to hiring, you may be hiring people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
especially PhDs. What do you see that one thing that constantly goes wrong with PhDs?
When I'm hiring,
Yeah. In the
so I
interviews,
would
what do you
say,
see is the one thing that's going wrong constantly?
well, the first thing I think, even before the interview, when you're applying on your CV,
Yeah,
tailor your CV to
the
the
job
job.
description.
So
Yeah,
do not just describe your esoteric PhD of looking at, a
yeah,
small area of research, because that's
yeah.
not going to be applicable to your job. You need
Right.
to say, this job, this PhD has given me this insight, this skill set, this capability to work in this role, this
Mm,
specific role in this job. And I always think it's good to point out why you, like why specifically you, like what's your specific skill set that makes you achieve, the essential criteria and the desirable criteria for this. And I don't know if this is just maybe a pet peeve of mine, but a big, massive list of publications
yeah, I
and,
know. Yeah.
a 3-4 page CV. CV should be 2 pages, short and sweet. Nobody's reading it more because they've probably got about 40 applicants for the same role. They're not going to
Mm,
get past page one. So if you've not said what you need to say in page one of your CV or page two, it's not, nobody's reading your full list of publications, although very impressive. You can send a little, I've got 24 publications and here's the link to my,
true.
research gate.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. It's just very, I think, making everybody's in their own head of what I've done is so important,
Important.
and it is.
Yeah, yeah,
It is like your PhD is really important to your field and
yeah.
everything. But when it comes to a job application and a sieve of multiple people going for the same role, you
Mm,
have to set yourself apart from those other people who've also got PhDs in very good, important areas. So it's
yeah.
what makes you specific to that role.
Mm, mm,
So a lot of the time, that's will be what will get me through the CV gate. And then once you're in an interview, it's really difficult to judge somebody in like a half an hour, 40-minute interview. It's not easy to get the gist of somebody's personality and their character.
yeah.
And for me, as much as the technical aspects are really important, you obviously have to be good at what you do. You have to produce good work output. But I think having the right character, the right attitude,
Mm,
having a can-do attitude of, okay, I might not know that,
mm,
let me read up, let me try and get to know it. I'll do my best. Like
mm,
that kind of can-do attitude is always gets you further, I think,
mm,
because
mm.
it doesn't matter what your current knowledge set is. You've got the
Yeah.
motivation, the drive, the work ethic to
Mm,
learn anything,
mm,
and
mm,
that's sort of what I would look for in an interview. But it's difficult
mm,
to get that across, obviously, because everyone's obviously nervous in interviews as well. So
mm.
it's difficult. But that previously I've been lucky in that I have got people with good characters and good skill sets. But
Mm,
sometimes it's just your luck.
mm, mm, mm. Okay, Laurie, thank you for breaking down that CV part. That is so true. I see
Yeah.
that happening all the time in my work. Like, no one has given them that understanding that it's not going to work drilling down into the micro aspects of your work. It's not helping anybody to see the value, zoom out, show what all you can do. So that's definitely one thing I've been seeing happening so much with PhDs. And I'm just taking a U-turn over here and
Mm-hmm.
asking you from the perspective of a mother now. Okay, Laurie.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my baby while I was doing my PhD. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought my PhD is doomed. It's gone.
Yeah.
I have nothing. But then I had 5 publications, and all of that happened, right? And how do you see motherhood and balancing your journey as a project manager? And is there anything that you want to share with women who are, say, getting pregnant during their PhD or while at work, and what fears did you face, if at all, would you be open to sharing them?
God, it's so difficult, isn't it? First of all, congratulations for actually finishing your PhD after having your baby. I could not have done that
I
in
am
that
sure
time
you would
scale.
have done that if you were pregnant too. I'm sure every mother would do that. I felt the same. I would have not done that, but
I
I'm
don't know if
sure.
I could have done that. I mean, honestly, obviously the children come, they just change your perspective, they change your priorities, they just change everything, don't they? So, the reason I sort of moved more into project management, if I'm honest, than the technical specialist role, is that in my technical specialist role, I like to be good at it. I wanted to, be at the top of my game. So I'd read a lot of papers, like at the weekend, in my spare time, in my evenings, and I was like, you know what? Once this baby's here, I don't really want to be doing that. I want to be spending my
True.
time with them.
Yeah.
So project management seemed like a good way for me to get my I was still doing technical things. It was still interesting to me. I was still involved in big research projects, but I wasn't having to be that technical expert and be on top of the research publications all the time in my spare time. So I felt like I got some of my spare time back that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it is difficult. I feel like, especially the way academia contracts are set up. I used to think this all the time. It was like 2-3 years contracts. And then at what point in that contract are you entitled to maternity leave? Do you know, it's quite difficult for women.
Right.
And then if you take a career break, depending on the kind of workplace where you are, does that mean that you could have been het for the next step up, but then a man's going to take it because you've had the year off. So there's definitely, I mean, to say there's no implications on your career for having a child
Yeah.
would be wrong, because there definitely are.
Yeah.
But I think there are good companies. Like I know, for example, that there's certain companies that offer the full year maternity leave, fully paid,
Mm.
in the UK, but they can do that because there's so few women that work in the space that it
True.
actually doesn't
Yeah.
cost them a lot to do that.
Yeah.
There are companies that have better flexibility for women that way, but for me, it was you kind of have to make a choice. I think once you're back in it, once you've had your maternity, I think you can definitely, you balance it, and you can decide whether you want to work part-time or flexible, or you want to be right back into your career, which is great. But I think there is no real balance when you're going off with your baby for your maternity leave. It's either you're basically choosing what you would rather at that point. So I know women that have come back after a couple of months back to work because that's what they wanted to do. I know women who've taken the full year maternity. It's just what you choose to be your priority for that small amount of time where the baby's really young. And then after that, you can choose what you want to do with your career. But it definitely does have an impact, if I could say that, on career progression. I've seen it, some of my colleagues and everything. But then you have this beautiful baby. So does it really
Yeah.
matter? Grand scheme of things,
Yeah, I see that you're so clear in your head. Like it's also about understanding what's your priority at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that makes it a lot easier is the support system you have. Like for me, I
Yes.
had the support system of family. I'm sure that you had the same family. Many
Yes.
women, if they miss out on that privilege, it becomes extra harder to focus on your career while you're having the baby when they are so young. So I believe
Yes.
it's the environment, it's the support system that matters a lot, both
Yeah,
at
100%.
office and both at home. Your take.
Yes. Oh, 100%. So having that support system at home means that it does free up your mental capacity to think of other things like your job
Right.
and
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
work. But also, having a supportive workplace is the main, like, a really, big advantage, because if they're supportive, if they're flexible, and they help you come back to work easily, that's a big advantage. So it's important to understand that before you plan having a
Baby.
family. If you're
Yeah.
maybe in an environment where it's not, they don't think there'd be a supportive workplace, like, you can change. Like, a lot of people they get used to it. They're in their comfort zone. If I've worked here for ages, and
Right.
maybe I owe them something. It's what suits you, your personal family. What benefits, like maternity benefits, are going to be best for you. So, look into that and shop around for your job. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of different opportunities out there.
Thank you, Laurie. You've been really, really very awesome and very honest about this take on motherhood. And coming back to your leadership as a project manager, Laurie, was there any messy thing that happened that shaped you the way you are today? Any messy moment that you can think of? And that's when you realized, okay, this is what I want to be, and this is what I don't want to be as a leader.
Messy moment. I've definitely seen examples of how not to be a leader. I think that's.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't want to go into too much detail about that, but I've definitely seen maybe different leadership
Mhm.
styles that I've thought are maybe not the most
Mhm.
conducive to having a good work output, or happy team. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think sometimes you sort of assume that everyone at the top
Yeah.
definitely knows what they're doing, and they are amazing, and they're
Right.
brilliant, they deserve that. And sometimes they're not the best example of what a good leader should be. There's definitely, I've had lucky enough to have amazing examples of good leaders, and
Mhm.
some that maybe aren't that good leaders.
Mhm.
Um, so I think just seeing how I've seen it play out where it's not gone down well, and then seeing it play out where you've seen more productive staff, seeing people are happy and they're motivated. That's the biggest thing in being a leader. And I think sometimes, what's the wee sketch, and it's, you've got the men pulling the tractor, and there's like a guy on the tractor with a whip, and they say that's the boss, and then the
Mhm.
leader's like out pulling the tractor at the front
Mhm.
with the rest of the guys. So it's like leading by example, or not
Yeah.
expecting others to do what you wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So there's nothing specifically messy, but definitely examples of what not to do.
Okay, so if someone had to say what's Laurie's leadership style, if I went and asked your team members that what's Laurie's leadership style, or what is one thing you like about Laurie as a leader, what do you think they would say?
God, I hope they'd say something complimentary. um, I hope they'd say.
What's it like in your head? What do you think that the best
I,
thing
I
that they
feel
would say? Yeah.
I feel like it's a bit of a democracy. It's definitely like I'm considering everyone's opinion before we make a decision. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah. So inclusion, I
transparent.
may say inclusion. There's a lot of
Yeah,
inclusion happening.
a
Yeah.
lot of
Okay.
inclusion, and a lot of transparency and communication. Like if I heard something be
Hmm.
trickled out from the top, I'm gonna share it in any way that I can with them as soon as I can, keep
Hmm.
them all in the loop. So yeah, transparency and inclusion.
Okay.
I
Okay.
hope, unless they're
Yeah.
not like she's terrible. She's
Maybe this podcast is a cue for you to find
yeah.
out is that true. I'm sure that is definitely true, Laurie. And
I don't know.
yeah, Laurie. Now, if a PhD were to transition from academia to industry, they already find it very hard. And so, what do you think are some of the reflective questions that they can ask themselves to make that decision for them,
To make
whether
the
it should
decision.
be academia or whether it should be industry?
Oh, what do they enjoy doing most? Do they
Hmm.
enjoy deep diving into the blue sky research of it all?
Hmm.
Um, or do they enjoy seeing the outputs or the fruits of their labor, you know, in a product that comes off a line eventually? Or,
Hmm.
it depends on what they specifically enjoy about their job. If
Hmm.
they like going down the rabbit hole and
Hmm.
spending a lot of time on something,
Hmm.
industry's probably not for them
Hmm.
because industry's like tight deadlines, quick results,
Yeah.
fast fails.
Yeah.
But there's also the excitement of the inclusion of the business side and seeing those things become a reality and all of a sudden a plane's flying with something that you suggested on the engine. Like there's a thrill in that, but there's also a thrill in, well, let me just spend a good 6 months deep diving into this problem and really working it out, publishing
Yeah.
loads, and
Yeah.
probably actually understanding how much you enjoy publishing. Because
Hmm.
what a lot of people don't realize is when you go into industry, a lot of the times you're, if you like, held back by IP restrictions. So a
Yes.
lot of the time,
Yeah.
even if you're working on something really
You
interesting and the
cannot
metallurgy of
publish.
it,
Yeah.
you can't publish it. I mean,
Yeah.
you obviously have the internal recognition
Hmm.
of the company, but
Hmm.
if you enjoy publishing, that's something you like to do. Not to say
Hmm.
that there isn't opportunities to do that in industry. Sometimes there is, if it's funded by, Innovate UK or a funding body. Sometimes they want publications as an output of the project,
Hmm.
but it would probably be more restricted and there would be less. Would have to have approval from customers
Hmm.
and things like that. So if you like free publications, academia's for you probably.
Yeah. Right.
Um, and if you enjoy more of the business outputs and benefits, industries for you. But there's certain companies now that do offer that hybrid, like where we work at the FRC is the
True.
hybrid of both. So there
Yeah.
there is,
Yeah.
you can be the bridge if you want. It just depends
Yeah.
on where you want to work.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
see. I see that the role that University of Strathclyde, this Advanced Research Farming Center has, they are such a mix of best of both worlds. I see that as that way. You are like connected to academia, but you are also working on the industry side of things, right?
Yeah.
So, on that note, expansion of the previous question only, Laurie, that if you're a PhD today, passing out, okay, what
Mhm.
offers you more diversity in terms of choosing career options in the long run? I know it's always industry, but what is, in your opinion, true, academia or industry?
In terms of broadening your opportunities
In your career
in your
portfolio,
career
kind of roles and everything, what do you think is a better choice?
I would definitely say industry is probably the better choice, but at the same time, if you're in STEM,
Hmm.
I feel like everything's transferable. Like as long as if you pitch it the right way in your CV
Hmm.
and your interview,
Hmm.
like I've gone from chemistry to metallurgy, like
Right.
to welding. I know people who have gone from like chemistry to accounting, and you just like STEM is just showing that you've got a good skill set for problem solving. You can approach
Hmm.
problems in a technical way,
Hmm.
and as long as you are not so specific in how you're saying you approach those problems with your PhD,
Hmm.
um, you know that you can apply it to anything because yeah, I think it definitely, and industry's probably going to open up more channels for you. But at the end of the day, if you've been in academia for a while and you fancy a change,
Hmm.
there's nothing
Hmm.
to say that you can't pivot if you market yourself in the correct way.
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I
Yeah.
think having that, sort of understanding of you are marketing yourself in a way when you're going for an interview, and you're putting your CV in. Even understanding that
Hmm.
would give you a better advantage with industry, because that's all industry is pitching different ideas, and understanding business benefit and things like that. So if you're thinking about and approaching problems in that way, maybe industry is more for you anyway.
Sure. And on that note, one question that comes to my mind is again, it's the pace. The pace at academia seems to be a lot slower, but industry
100%.
catches up very fast, right? So, does that give you an advantage? I believe that does. What's your opinion there?
It definitely gives you an advantage if you work at pace.
Yeah, yeah,
I think I've obviously we bridge at the moment, so we have certain colleagues that are more academically minded, certain colleagues that
yeah,
are more industry minded, but we're all working in the same project, usually
right,
to
yeah.
certain goals,
Hmm,
and trying to change that mindset of the
hmm.
academic. Although this is a very interesting finding, we still have to hit that milestone on the 28th.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
just park that for just now, and we'll keep moving on this direction.
yeah,
Which can be difficult if you're if you're curious and you want to understand that more.
right.
Um, that is difficult, but the change of pace is only an advantage. Basically,
Hmm.
everyone was it faster, better quality, and what's it? Cost, time, and
Efficiency.
quality. Yeah,
Yeah,
efficiency. Those three
efficiency.
things. That's basically what everyone wants. A
Yeah,
better cost, time, and quality.
yeah, and because we spoke about faster efficiency and all of that, so that brings my mind to AI, right? Now, with
Oh yeah.
all the AI thing going around, how are you integrating it into your work, and how is that impacting your role as a project manager? How is it evolving it?
If I'm honest, I really don't like the use of AI,
Mm-hmm,
just because there's certain things like IP, export
mm-hmm,
control. How
mm-hmm.
much is that controlled? Where are the servers based? Like, I don't think we should necessarily be feeding it with information. I know
Mm.
that sounds terrible, but I also worry about it making people lazy. I don't think
Okay.
it's. I
Mm-hmm,
know you can use it to your advantage. You can use it in certain ways, and it's
mm-hmm,
not. It can be a powerful tool to help accelerate efficiency.
mm-hmm.
I'm not um, naive to that fact. And just in my personal role in what we're
Yeah,
doing just now,
yeah.
people are paying us for specific research that hasn't been done before.
Mm-hmm,
Um, we're creating, reports that are usually IP sensitive or have some sort of export control around it. So we don't really like ChatGPT. We don't really work with it. Don't
mm-hmm,
really like it in that way, because it has to be your own effort into things. If
mm-hmm,
you like, especially with research, I'm worrying that it's going to dilute the quality of research and technical understanding
mm-hmm,
if we're relying a lot on AI.
mm-hmm.
So I don't personally like it. I mean, that's my feelings on it, but I'm not to say that it couldn't be used wonderfully in manufacturing. And also, I should really watch what I'm saying, because there is an AI squared group within NMIS who are working on how AI can help manufacturing. So,
Yeah,
in a manufacturing setting, yes, it can be
yeah,
very advantageous. For
yeah.
what we do within research,
Hmm.
I wonder about its value add, and worry more about it diluting quality.
Okay, okay. On that note, I'll ask the last question, Laurie, for today, which is what is the one question you think people have never asked you and you would want to talk about?
Have never asked me. I know this whole thing's completely new to me. Nobody's ever asked me anything before. Um,
Or something that you want to be asked and you want to talk about?
I want to be asked and talked about. I don't know. I would usually like to get in a little bit of feminism, but I've got that in already. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Sorry.
okay. And you told us at the beginning that you are into reading and all of that stuff. So what are the kind of books that you generally read? Is it all
Oh,
forming and forging, or it's beyond that?
no,
Well, yeah.
no. I like Agatha Christie's and crime novels and everything
Agatha
like that.
Christie. That's what you
Yeah,
said. Okay,
yeah,
that was
Agatha Christie.
something I used to read during the school time. I didn't read it anymore, but yeah, that's a snippet of memory you brought back to me when you mentioned Agatha Christie. So you're into detective stories, is that right,
All
Laurie?
detective stories has to be a problem. I mean, I have to be solving a problem, even if it's in my spare time. It's just,
Okay. Okay, so
it's
if
just fun.
Laurie wasn't a project manager or a
Oh, mystery
PhD,
writer, mystery
right?
writer, 100%.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Laurie, it's been great, and I love that so many aspects that you dived into, specifically internal repetition and how CV PhDs are not doing it right, and the feministic conversation that we had. I guess these are all the audience is going to benefit in many different ways, and I think this one conversation wasn't enough. There is so much more I think you have to share that I can get from you, and you should be there for one more podcast. We should uh, schedule one more. And thank you so much, Laurie, for all those insights. And I'm sure I'm going to come back to you for one more episode of this. And any last few words? What's your experience with this podcast, and how was it for you?
No, just thank you for the opportunity. It's interesting to speak to another, woman in engineering and understand your perspective as well, and being a mother. So it's great to, have that discussion, which probably doesn't happen a lot. So
Yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah,
enjoyed it.
yeah. Thank you, Laurie.